Welcome back in, everybody. Another episode of Drilling Deeper is on tap. We're going to hear today from Nick Pearman of Rogers Group, who was at the 2025 Pit and Quarry Roundtable and Conference down in Phoenix with us early this year. And before we play our special interview with our special guest, Nick, I want to welcome in once again Jack Kapansky. Jack, what's going on?
Kevin, good to be here. Been a minute since we've recorded together. Sort of been star-crossed a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. You've got some solo shows under your belt. I think I've got one under my belt, but we're got the band back together. That's here, right. And we've got Nick Pearman from Rogers Group ready to go here. You know, dropping this episode on March 11th. The ice is melting on Lake Erie. Jack.
Thank God.
I know.
Thank God.
Froze for the first time in several years, I believe, and doesn't matter if you're Nick at Rogers Group in his territory or even along the southern coast of the United States. It's been a cold winter, icy and snowy, and I think people are ready to get out of it, get to Ag 1, get the spring started up at their operations, and just get things rolling.
Cold is cold, man, and we are nearing hopefully the end of it, at least up here in the north on the lakefront. It gets brutal. You know that, I know that, but we're entering kind of the best time of year. We're getting into spring. We got some March Madness on the horizon. We got stuff like the Masters, and then I guess more applicably, we got Ag 1 coming up. Got the Pit and Quarry Hall of Fame. Got all that good stuff. Just got back from the roundtable, like you mentioned. So, hopefully, turning the page on the cold and dreariness of the winter, and getting into the spring, and operations starting up, and a lot of good stuff on the horizon here.
Yeah, it was certainly nice to get down to Phoenix, away from the Cleveland cold. Right at the very end of January, we had our annual roundtable down there. We brought producers in, manufacturer and dealer partners who supported our event, and want to thank all of them. And we brought a number of guests into our booth, or whatever you want to call it, our special room where we did interviews. And some of those we've put out thus far as videos that you can watch on pitandquarry.com. But we also were fortunate to bring in Nick. I think we actually cut one of those as a video that's available online, a short, so to speak. But we've got our full-length interview here today with the Rogers Group Senior Director of Operations Service and Support. That's a mouthful. That's a heck of a title. But just to kind of be plain, Nick's a really smart guy. We've had him at our roundtable 3 years. I'm not sure if it's 3 consecutive ones, but we actually, brought him into the event probably around 22. I think we had him on our panel the first year he was there, and it was probably my first experience or interaction with Nick, and I kind of walked away thinking, wow, this guy is a smart guy. His background's actually mechanical engineer by trade, and at this point here in 25, Jack, I guess he's been with Rogers Group for about 9 years. You'll hear today in our interview with Nick that he kind of has a unique start to his career. He did not start in aggregates. And I won't spoil that. Nick will tell you in his own words how he got started and how he transitioned to aggregates. But Rogers Group, for anybody who doesn't know, that's one of the largest companies in our industry. They're actually the largest private aggregate producing company in the United States, and they're one that we try to keep tabs on continuously. They've been good to work with. They've been partners, so to speak, on our roundtable. Sending representatives and company leaders to our event. We appreciate having them, and we appreciated having Nick with us in Phoenix as well.
Yeah, took the words right out of my mouth. Nick was, I believe, in my roundtable room. And he's just always chock full of good information. Obviously a very knowledgeable guy. Like you said, his career path was definitely very interesting compared to some of those that we've talked to and gotten to know in the industry. But yeah, he's been great to work with. Rogers Group has been great to work with, and I was glad you had the chance to sit down with him, and you shared a lot of good info. So I'm excited to share this interview as well.
Well, you'll hear from Nick on a few different topics. He's going to talk about autonomous hauling. That's something we've talked about on the show quite a bit, Jack. AI, same idea. Digitalization, electrification, what's going on with underground at this point. We're hearing more about that as a pathway to the future with aggregates. And at the end of this interview, you're going to hear an assessment from Nick on the market and the state of the industry. So without further ado, let's play our interview with Nick Pearman of Rogers Group. We've got Nick Pearman here with us today from Rogers Group. Nick, this is your third Pit and Quarry Roundtable. We're down here in Phoenix, and glad you made it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, you're a technology guy, right? I feel like that's kind of where I've noticed over the years, that's where a lot of your interest and expertise kind of lies. But before we kind of get into some of the big trends that have taken place industry-wide, I guess tell us a little bit about your role, your career, and your history at Rogers Group and some of the things that you're focused on there.
Okay. Well, my name's Nick Pearman. I work for Rogers Group. I've been there almost 9 years, and I'm a mechanical engineer by trade. and I actually started off my career in the garbage industry, so in waste management, designing recycling plants. And so had a lot of experience designing equipment and specing equipment and doing process flows for the waste industry. So I made the leap into aggregates about 9 years ago, and haven't looked back. It's been a great transition for me. It's a great community to work in, and Rogers Group is a really great company to work for. You know, it's a very large private company, which is nice. There's a lot of benefits that come along with that. You know, the largest private aggregate industry company in the industry, and the ownership of the company is very employee centric. They care a lot about their employees and have done a lot for us. And you see that in the employee base. You know, we have a lot of 40, 45-year employees that retire out. And I think that's just a testament to how great the company is. Right now, I am the Senior Director of Operations, Service, and Support. So we are the corporate support group for the company. We do anything from strategic sourcing to environmental permitting to project management for our capital projects, as well as capital budgeting, a little bit of everything. So process improvement. And so it's a very interesting job, but it exposed me to a lot of the different great aspects of our company. I get to work with a lot of great people.
If you can too, Nick, maybe lay out where your sites are at, how many operations you essentially touch at the end of the day.
Yeah, so we have about, I think we're about 70 active aggregate sites in sand and gravel, and we have around 40 to 45 asphalt plants and a fairly large construction arm of our company that does everything from laying culvert and pipe and utilities to paving interstates. So kind of a top to bottom sector in the aggregates industry.
Well, within the industry these days, Nick, there's a lot of things that we're kind of talking about on the technology front. That's obviously where you're focused to a large degree with your role there at Rogers Group. I wanted to ask about autonomous haulers. You know, we've seen select companies, several companies kind of publicize their interest in certain projects that they're working on industry-wide. And I'm curious, you know, from the Rogers Group seat, where do you guys kind of come down on the autonomous hauling opportunity? Has there been anything you can share to date? And I guess what intrigues you, if anything, about what's happening in that space?
Well, I think, you know, when you think about where we're going to be at in 30 or 40 years, I think autonomous haulage is going to play a big part in that. We've been actively participating with our OEM partners on getting that set up. I can't really go through the details right now, but it is on our radar, and we're actively pursuing it. And you know, right now it's in its infancy, and so a lot of people are kind of waiting for that first big success story. But we think there's going to be a lot of benefits to it. So, you know, the way I see it is autonomous haulage is not, you know, you can't just say, oh, we're going to cut heads. We're going to reduce our labor force. That's a big benefit of it, but it has to be more efficient. It has to be safer. And there's a lot of aspects to it that other than just, oh, there's not a guy sitting in the seat. So when we look at it, those are big things we're looking for is this going to be more efficient than a human? Is this going to have less property damage incidents than a human? Is this going to be easier on the brakes than a human and things like that? Because when you look at the potential cost of anything autonomous, I think it's pretty substantial. So cutting ahead doesn't always pay for that. You have to be lower operating costs on the machine. So, but we have great relationships with a lot of our OEM partners, and we are actively exploring it.
What dynamic, just sticking with the autonomous hauling side, you know, and that could, I suppose, bleed to other equipment areas, dozers, excavators, loaders down the road. But I wonder, you know, what excitement or what dynamic is like that, like within the company when you start to talk about significant wholesale change and the look and feel about how load and haul transpires in a quarry environment.
Yeah, I think that with technology in the aggregates industry, and one thing I've noticed is that, you know, we're usually the last to adopt technology, and we tend to be stubborn with technology because, well, we can do it this way. We've been doing it this way for 100 years. But Rogers Group is always looking for the next best thing, and technology's played a big role in that. So I think getting buy-in from the field is important, and getting them educated on what are the benefits, what are the potential benefits, is a big part of that. But no, I think we we are looking at it as, you have to be involved in technology like this, or you will be the last one to the party. And that means you're going to be the highest cost producer. And that's what we do not want. Our goal is to be the lowest cost producer.
What impact do you feel like this direction, whether it's autonomy or technology in general, Nick, what impact does that do on our ability to potentially bring in different kinds of minds, new people, make our industry a little bit more interesting? Because I've been talking with some folks today, producers like you, just about that challenge we face. And I think every producer experiences that to one degree or another. But is this an opportunity to kind of redefine who we are as producers, what jobs are part of the operations that are within aggregate producing companies?
Yeah, I think we've seen this already, for drones, for example. I mean, when you look at the technology that's come along with drones, especially in inventory management, it has been an absolute game changer. And with that has brought in new positions and new mindsets that might not know much about crushing rock, but they know about the technology and how to utilize it. And they can spot inefficiencies or problems in your processes or in the way you're doing it. And, you get a different point of view. And sometimes it can be a little naive, because rock crushing is a tough industry to be in. It's hard on equipment. It's hard on people. It's long hours. It's dirty. But if they can grasp that side of it and then utilize their experience and talents on the technology side, it really is a successful relationship. And we've been able to implement a lot of really exciting technologies with people like that.
Let's talk a little bit about AI, if you can, Nick.
Yeah.
I feel like that means different things to different people. And
Yeah.
I think there's maybe opportunities. There's probably opportunities everywhere around a producing company, whether it's on the front lines of the operation or on the back end. Where, if you can, like, where's your exploration or interest at that point? Where are there some low-hanging fruit opportunities? And I guess maybe take us inside Rogers Group a little bit, if you can. I guess, what are the conversations like at this point? I mean, just a lot to kind of explore and take in.
Yeah. I think the obvious is within the mundane tasks, especially when you're looking at inside the office. So any sort of data processing, when you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, I think it's got a lot of immediate power for that. I think we are the biggest problem we have right now with AI is just data security. You don't want to let something into your system that you're not 100% confident that isn't going to turn into a monster and cause you problems. So we've been very cautious, and our IT group takes that very seriously. So they drive that AI implementation. But that's really where the focus is right now, is how can we process data, and how can we look at our data and draw inferences from our data with less manpower. So that's kind of the easy answer too, because I think that's what everyone's really looking at. I think in 10 years, you look at a lot of accounting, taxes, things like that. I mean, it's got huge potential. But again, data security is going to be the big challenge, because you've seen what happened with the whole ransomware, 6 years of ransomware attacks.
It'd be costly the other day.
Yes.
Slow you down, shut you down.
So you can have all these great savings, and then it can cost you a lot of money the first time something goes wrong. So I'm cautiously optimistic about it. But when I look at operations wide, where I see AI going is looking at pairing it with other technologies that we're using, like the drones. So we use drones for a lot of really cool inventory management tools, as well as mine planning. And if you can have AIs to start integrate with drones, I think you can start to open up some more possibilities for drones that don't really require a lot of effort. I think of even things like infrared drones. We have infrared drones, and they're great for spotting issues throughout the plant, right? If you have a hot bearing, you can spot it with an infrared drone, and you can do something about it before it causes you downtime. Well, if you can start getting AI to start automatically flying the plant and making decisions about what it needs to go further investigate, it doesn't seem like a very far leap to me to get to that point. So another thing I think about a lot is AI with respect to inventory management. So when we're looking at what product demands we have coming up in sales, AI has the ability to do a lot of different calculations that would take someone months. So
Analyze history.
Analyze your production modes, look at what is you could give it parameters. What is the most cost-effective way to reach this desired inventory level? What is the fastest way to reach this desired inventory level? So you can give it all these conditions, and you can solve these problems without having to hunt and peck. So I think there's a lot of potential in that as well, just operational efficiency by feeding it your data, feeding it what you're doing, saying, hey, this is what I want. What are some cool ways to get there?
And now a word from today's sponsor, ASFAB. The people at ASFAB, a sponsor of today's podcast, are the experts in fines recovery systems with over 65 years of experience. From custom process design to water reclamation and frac sand solutions, ASFAB delivers innovation and quality. Visit asfab.com, that's AZFAB.com, to learn more and turn industry challenges into opportunities. Also, ASFAB will be at Ag1 2025 in St. Louis from March 25th through 27th at America's Center Convention Complex, located in booth 6535. Thank you to ASFAB.
We hear a lot about AI, read a lot about it in the mainstream media. I wonder, do you see more companies, tech companies, identifying aggregates, identifying mining or related industries, developing solutions that are driven by AI or some form of AI, or is that something that's going to come, you think?
I think it will. I think what I've seen is some of the basics like, hey, we can start to use AI to analyze like your electrical consumption. And if we start to see certain signatures within your amp draw on a motor, AI will learn what that means and can tell you things. So that isn't out there yet. I mean, it's getting there, but it's not. I don't think it's really a commercial product yet. But that is something that I've seen that has potential that people are working on. But again, it's kind of basic. You're just basically analyzing data that you already have. So, but other than on the programming side, as far as programs that we use in the office, it really isn't pushed by a lot of different other areas.
Nick, we hear a lot about the value of the 40, 50-year, 30-year worker. You mentioned Rogers Group has many of those, and with that comes so much knowledge. The sights, the sound, the smells around equipment within a plant. There's certainly value to that. I guess I wonder, you bring in intelligence, this new approach, potentially with AI. What happens to that historically, valued knowledge? The people having that, is just the approach going forward to go more strictly with the AI, or is there value in both, you think? Or
I think there's value in both, but the thing is you're never going to replace that trade knowledge that people learn in the job, because until AI is turning a wrench and replacing a motor on a crusher, AI is not going to help you out there. And that trade knowledge is something that, we try as hard as we can to get that passed down to the younger generation, because it is going away. You see it with kind of that generation retiring, and the younger generations have different priorities. So I do see a lot of promise, though. I see a lot of people in our company that are younger, that are starting out their careers, that have the work ethic and have the desire to learn. I would like to see it more prevalent, but just getting those folks with the people that have that experience and getting that knowledge transferred. But I just don't ever see in the quarries AI being able to do certain tasks. I mean, I don't
Never
think it's ever going to be able to clean up underneath the conveyor and
get into a
spot.
screen.
Yeah, it can't change a screen. You know, it's not going to be able to change an idler on a conveyor, or look at a crusher and say, hey, you know, I think we need to do this, or take an oil sample or something like that. But you know, it's going to be able to look at your product gradations and say, hey, your 57s are getting a little coarse. You might want to take a look at your crusher setting. So I think there's a lot of potential, and especially if you pair it with other technology that we already have, to where you can really implement some valuable solutions to problems that we have.
AI seems to be the exciting thing everyone wants to talk about, but there's more simple, more widely available digital technology out there now. And we've kind of seen the digitalization of the industry going forward for, I guess, 40, 50 years, you
Yeah.
go all the way back with automation. But it almost seems like so many things that are coming forward, whether it's a crusher or a screen, it's not just the hardware anymore. There's some sort of system equipped to it that
Yeah.
feeds you information, allows you to help make some decisions, predicting maintenance, supporting your maintenance crews. So what are you seeing on that more simpler front right now, and how integral or not are some of those systems to the equipment that you think, whether it's a Rogers Group or others, could be putting out there?
Yeah, I think a lot of it that is significant is more of an internal loop control. So when you look at some of the brains behind a crusher or a hydraulic system on like an HSI that allows it to maintain its setting, the technology that they have, you know, it's getting more and more advanced, but it is almost in a closed loop. You can pull some data off of it, but it's there to do its job, and that's about it. One of the issues that comes along with all this digitization is we're still in a rock quarry. And when you're in a rock quarry or and you're in the sand and gravel pit, it's a brutal environment. And that's one thing that's been a hindrance to more and more digitization is the robustness of the designs of all of the equipment. So if you look at sensors and how much downtime sensors cause throughout the company, you know, it's just
Frustrating.
it's frustrating. And if it never broke, it'd be the greatest thing ever. You know, oh man, this is great. But they're becoming more and more of an issue of, hey, this is actually hurting us because it is not robust. You know, it hasn't been able to make it through a year in the quarry without breaking, or it can't withstand getting, you know, when the plant gets hit by lightning and it fries everything. So, especially when you look at rolling equipment and all of the sensors that come along with rolling equipment, it just becomes another thing that can cost you money. Now, it does great work. It tells you,
When
hey,
it
you
can.
have a problem and you need to fix it, but it's also kind of spurning its own issues. So, and then the other issue that I've seen quite a bit is we have digitization from so many different things. Getting the data together is a challenge.
This platform, that platform.
Yeah, and
everywhere.
and it's expensive to get the data together because it's not just, oh, you get an API feed and that's great. It's, oh, well, we need to work through this API feed, get the data, and then we need to work through the existing system and make sure that it can take the data and that it's reliable and that it's doing it on the right time of day and all this. So the more and more data we're able to gather, the more challenging it's going to be because you have to be able to get that data to one place. You know, it's tough when it lives in 20 or 30 different places. It becomes less useful. So one of the big focuses is, yeah, we need all this data and it's great and it helps you run better, but it would be nice if it were a consistent system. And so I know there's a lot of solutions to that, but that is one of the challenges with digitization is, you know, every OEM has their own platform and they all have great information. I mean, I love being able to log in and look at some of this data. It's a game changer because you can verify things like that. I mean, I was looking at the grade of a ramp yesterday and it took me 3 seconds to pull it up and check the grade while I was on the phone. I mean, it's just
right
amazing. It's amazing. It's just, it's in 30 or 40 different places and we can get it in one place, but it takes time and money to do that. So
When you talk to technology providers or vendors, whether you're using them or not. Do you have a sense that I'm sure obviously they hear those grievances about the environment? It is what it is in that case. Can the technology get more advanced where the sensors in many cases aren't so sensitive and they can fully operate? Or is that just another
I
challenge?
think so. No,
Yeah.
I think it just in my opinion, I don't know this, but I think it just hasn't been as big of a focus of let's make a bulletproof digital solution. It's been let's make a good digital solution that gives you everything you want. And then when it gets out in the real world, the real world is a hard place.
Refine from there, yeah.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the focus needs to be on how do we get all of these items that are collecting all of this data to be more robust.
Nick, let's talk too about electrification. I feel like, again, maybe with automation, that's something we've been hearing about more in recent years. And, our environments aren't necessarily situated in places necessarily to kind of lend themselves to use electric. But I do see, as we go to shows, ConExpo, ConAg, and other ones that we hear more about electric equipment. We see real world equipment, being rolled out.
Yeah.
I think there's obviously more use of that in other countries. Europe's very big on that, but the U.S. is kind of its own animal. Yet we still continue to see vendors, talk about electrification, hybrid equipment, even. So, where do you feel like we are on that? How realistic or real world use is there on the stuff that you're seeing come out at the ConExpos and other places?
I think there is real world use. I think pure electric, especially battery powered, is a challenge just because the cost of the batteries, the weight of the batteries, the fire hazard of the batteries. But what we have seen a lot of great results in is hybrid equipment. Diesel over electric, where you have a diesel engine and it's powering an electric system. The great thing about it is you get all the benefits of an electric system. You get the high torque, you get the instantaneous power, but you also are utilizing the generation source, a diesel engine, at a more accommodating pace. So you're not putting that engine through the same stresses that you would if it were just a diesel piece of equipment. So we've seen a lot of promise out of hybrids, a lot lower operating costs. And I think hybrids are kind of the step in to the electric world that is realistic because they provide you real savings. So now with that comes cost, right? So it doesn't come free. So hopefully throughout time, the hybrid will become a cheaper and cheaper option, less expensive, because right now it's pretty significant cost differential, but it does show promise, and we are seeing benefits from that hybrid model.
Nick, we covered what I think are the high trends, the key trends, electrification, digitalization, AI, autonomy. Is there something else out there that you guys are exploring that's maybe more in its infancy on the technology front, or are those kind of the big technology trends and drivers that are kind of occupying your time and conversation at Rogers Group these days?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of those are the high points. We have a lot of technology. I think in the underground mines, there's a lot of potential for technology. So we have the ability to scan an entire mine in 3 dimensions and look at it in 3 dimensions. That's pretty useful tool. Underground drills having automated drilling, which is actually works very well. So there's a lot of cool things that are coming out with respect to, I would say, automation on equipment, and I think it's getting better and better every year. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers it.
Well, Nick, we almost exclusively talked about technology and equipment, what's transpiring there and trending, but it'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about what you're seeing in the business environment out there. I feel like it's been pretty good year after year. Think about 24. We're already into 25 here, but what are you seeing in your markets? How are aggregate producers? How are plants performing these days?
Yeah, I think everyone set a pretty high bar the previous year, and then last year was fairly strong starting out, but the winter has been rough. We've had bad weather. Interest rates are still an issue that we're seeing, both on residential housing and on some of the steady business you'd usually see with like warehousing and things like that. So interest rates, I think, are still going to play a big role on how the next year is going to be. It hasn't been, I would say we're cautiously optimistic about interest rates and where they're going to go, but I'm not seeing any signs right now of interest rates going down, by summer at least. So, but it plays such a huge role in all the private work, and that's a big staple of our business. Now, on the public side, we have so many different market areas that you kind of see the infrastructure spending ebbing and flowing in different areas. So you may have one area have a boom year and then a bust year the next year, and then it alternates in different areas. So we've seen infrastructure spending kind of dogging a little bit, where it's not really to what the historical expectation is, just on pure maintenance level, on maintaining and resurfacing and things like that. So
From a federal spend or state or both?
State spend, but the state's getting a lot of grant money from the feds. So, but I'm holding out promise. We still have infrastructure money left, but yeah, I mean, I think we're cautiously optimistic about the coming year, but interest rates are going to be an indicator for how that goes.
Could be the storyline on the business front. For
Yeah, and
aggregates.
I'm sure everyone's saying that. So,
Well, Nick, anything else you want to add before we get you out of here?
no, one thing is, what I keep saying about the younger generation is, we need to do everything we can. I think we have an opportunity as an industry to start attracting more and more younger talent. I think the younger generation is starting to get an interest in our line of work or similar lines of work, where a lot of people were like, oh, they just want to be in technology and working on computers. I think we really need to push and go after that younger generation any way that we can, because we are facing a wall of skilled labor that is retiring out of the workforce, and we have to replace it. So I see a lot of promise, and I see a lot of good things that Rogers Group and other companies are doing, and we just got to keep pushing.
We'll keep trying to do that as an industry, Nick, and thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Well, that was Nick Pearman, again, of Rogers Group. Nick, thanks for joining the show. Great to have you here on episode 36. And, Jack, Nick touched on a lot of different topics there. We talked about autonomous hauling, and it seems like that's on Rogers Group's radar. It seems like a lot of the big producers are either working on pilot projects or very closely paying attention to what's happening on that front. So not a surprise, so to speak, that Rogers Group's keeping an eye on that and probably soon to venture in more fully. You talked a lot about AI and some of the issues there. Talked about data security. I thought that was kind of interesting. I remember you and I were at a young leaders meeting 2 years ago, maybe it was last year, and there was a speaker. I think his name was Rich Sazy from a Texas producer, and he was talking about ransomware and the whole episode that he had. So Nick kind of got into that concept a little bit, talking about, it's very exciting and all with AI, and, there's going to be great opportunities there, but he had talked about something about security, which I had not really thought about before. So before, I guess, we go full bore into this, maybe dip our toes into the water a little bit operationally and in the back office. So I thought that was kind of an interesting takeaway. And it seemed like he is pretty optimistic for the most part. He talked about interest rates and weather, and I think those were a couple of talking points or keywords that came out of our roundtable discussions, at least the ones that I had. Seems like those were a theme. I even had a recent interview with TCI Manufacturing's Kellen Moylan, and he said while interest rates were probably the buzzword for 2024, the 2025 buzzword was going to be tariffs. So while everyone is largely optimistic, it still seems like there's headwinds out there swirling, whether it's the interest rates or tariffs, things to watch. So nobody seems ready to fully commit and say, hey, 2025 is going to be gangbusters. But all in all, I think, we heard some good positive sentiment from Nick, and I don't know, coming out of the roundtable, whether it was the discussions that you hosted with industry leaders or the panel you discussed, it seems like people are excited about the year that we've got going here and what's in store for the rest of 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, looking back on some of the transcripts that we got back from our roundtable discussions, I think there were a few things that stood out to me looking at 24 and 25 that I think kind of go in line with what Nick was talking about. I think there was a lot of sentiment that 2024, at least among my, the people in my roundtable room, the sentiment was kind of that 2024 was good, not great. It wasn't necessarily sort of the gangbusters year that we'd seen in maybe 22, 23, or in some recent years. And that I think, like you said, you kind of, or Nick, I should say, kind of hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of sort of cautious optimism with 25. I think there's a lot of relief that the election's over, that there's some certainty politically. That on the other hand, like you mentioned, there were several people in my room that talked about the tariffs that said, even if you mostly produce things domestically, if there's components or parts or different things that you need to get from overseas, how are those tariffs going to be passed on to you? How are you going to have to pass them on to customers? Weather, like you said, was a big factor that was talked about in our room. I know Cody Ladd with Kramer Materials mentioned that 2023 was, a sort of a pretty good year, but there was some stuff that was pushed off into 24, and then 24 had a lot of weather, so that kind of backlogged stuff into 25. So definitely playing a role there. Sort of really across the board, it seemed like. I'm sure other, certain places got hit harder than others, but definitely something that we saw from sort of the smaller producers as well as bigger ones. Martin Marietta, Vulcan Summit, they talked about those a lot in their quarterly reports. And then, just finally a lot of excitement about some emerging technologies. Again, that's some stuff Nick got into. He talked a little bit about the younger generation coming into the workforce, and I think that that's sort of going to be a very big driving factor. And I think a lot of this tech sort of taking shape in the industry is that you have a younger workforce now that is maybe less gun shy or more comfortable with these types of technologies, that are more sort of gung-ho about implementing them and finding ways to make it work, and not being worried about kind of being the guinea pig, if you will, not being afraid of being the first one to do it. So I think 25 is going to be a very interesting year. I think, like a lot of the years we've seen of late, it's going to have its challenges. Again, interest rates was kind of the buzzword of 24. Inflation was something we've been following the last couple of years. Supply chain has kind of gone up and down, and seems like that's kind of steadied out now. So yeah, tariffs, I think a lot of joy that the election's over, but we'll see how things go this year. But yeah, some cautious optimism, I think, is kind of the resounding thought from what I heard.
Yeah, just listening to your commentary there, Jack. I mean, you probably hit on 7, 8 different things. There's a lot that we're keeping tabs on as editors of Pit and Quarry magazine. And I got to think, as a producer, there's demand out there, but there's things you're going to watch. The interest rates, the inflation, the tariffs. If you're ready to make an investment or wanting to make an investment, things are a little bit more costly nowadays. They maybe a little bit more costly, beyond March or into April, as tariffs are getting put into effect, those sorts of things. So all in all, I think people feel really good, like you were saying, about what's going on out there. Aggregates and construction markets are still very local, so I suppose some are performing much better than others. As a baseline, I think everyone's pretty much performing average or at a fair, decent mark, but yeah, a lot of good sentiment coming out of the roundtable. One thing I wanted to hit on too, related to the roundtable, not so much about Nick Pearman, was you had a really good producer panel discussion there. We had Kristen Sweeney from U.S. Aggregates on the 3-person panel, along with Duff Quarry's Ross Duff and Luckstone's Raymond Slaughter, and I was impressed with all three. I think one thing that we recently published, or about to publish, that Kristen had shared, was just about how they used to go about maintenance with the mindset that winter was a very tangible thing and something, a big obstacle that kind of occupies a few months of the year, several weeks of the year at the very least. But winter in recent years is kind of reduced, been much more milder and been more conducive for extended production. So I was interested to hear, or just kind of thinking as an aside, how U.S. Aggregates was going about this winter, because it's been much more brutal in Indiana and parts of the Midwest. But she talked about the idea of maintenance and going about maintenance a little bit more proactively, not necessarily taking the winter as the opportunity to go about and do the things you cyclically would do on a maintenance front, but just doing things periodically as they need to be addressed, while at the same time kind of getting in front with technology and predictive technologies, predictive maintenance solutions to be a little bit more efficient at the end of the day. So again, just to say, there's a lot we're keeping tabs on. A lot of intelligent minds out there and some people with great experience that we had at the roundtable. So if you haven't been to a roundtable before, we've already got details on the 2026 Pit and Quarry Roundtable and Conference, as we're going to be going back to Florida, Jack, in January of next year. So we'd encourage anybody, whether you're a producer, manufacturer, dealer, to get on pitandquarryroundtable.com. That's our dedicated event website to learn more about La Playa Beach and Golf Resort in Naples and figure out how you can be a part of that with Jack, me, and the Pit and Quarry team.
Yeah, no, definitely excited about that. I think Phoenix was a nice change of scenery. I know since I've been here, my first one was down in Brazelton, Georgia, and then the last two were in Florida. I know Florida's been sort of a mainstay among roundtables in the past, so getting out to Phoenix was a nice kind of change of pace. And but excited to get back to Florida. Always a good time down there. Sounds like a great place to be, and I know no one's necessarily bummed to spend a couple days down in Florida in late January, early February. So
hard to
be
beat.
a good time. Yeah.
Well, before this month's over, Jack, we're going to be in St. Louis for the Ag 1, for the NSSGA annual convention. The Ag 1 show is March 25th through the 27th. Pit and Quarry's annual Hall of Fame induction ceremonies actually preceding Ag 1 by one day. The 2025 ceremony is going to be March 24th. That's a Monday, and we're going to be enshrining 4 new inductees that evening. Jerry Bauer, Ron Dietmar, Tom Hill, and Edgar B. Simons will be 4 men joining the ranks of the Pit and Quarry Hall of Fame, and we'd encourage anybody who's going to be attending Ag 1, the convention, going to be in the St. Louis area to come support us. We're going to be at the Marriott St. Louis Grand, and love to see you there. It's a black tie affair, so Jack and I will be dressed to the nines in our very finest, and I think I was just telling you I got to get mine to the dry cleaner before March 24th.
Right.
It's still wrinkled from last year's ceremony, I think.
Well, if the place we're staying in St. Louis is anything like the place we were staying in Phoenix for the roundtable, they offered same-day dry cleaning on suits, so that kind of bailed me out. I had forgot to I sort of slacked on getting my suit dry cleaned ahead of the roundtable, but Wigwam Resort in Phoenix really helped me out. Appreciate the quick turnaround there, but yeah, don't want to put yourself in that situation for sure.
No. Otherwise, I'll be ironing it, and we'll see what happens with my tux then. But
right.
But no, we want to congratulate those 4 individuals on their forthcoming enshrinement, and again, we're going to be inducting them into the Pit and Quarry Hall of Fame officially on March 24th. So we'd love to see you there. Jack and I, with the rest of the Pit and Quarry team, we're going to be at the Ag 1 show. We're going to have a booth at the America Center Convention Complex. I guess we're going to have to get used to saying that quite a bit. I know we've been publishing that a bit, and that's a bit wordy, but it is what it is. But the Pit and Quarry team is going to be at booth 3237 on the show floor. Stop by, grab a copy of our February or March edition. Those are show editions, or pre-show editions, I suppose. And we're going to be doing some video interviews like we've put out and how you've seen with guests like Nick Pearman. So, if you hear this ahead of the show and you want to visit with Jack or me, reach out by email. Give us a call, and we'd love to get you on the books and hear what it is you're seeing and doing across the aggregate industry. And finally, Jack, I know you're already kind of working behind the scenes here for our next episode. Can you give us a preview of what people can expect here with our second March podcast episode that's going to drop here in the coming weeks? Yeah,
absolutely. I'm going to be joined by TerraSource, representatives from TerraSource, going to be talking about the latest of what's going on with their company, what they're seeing from an equipment and technology front. Hopefully going to get a little bit of an Ag 1 preview with them. TerraSource, for those who are unaware, a company providing crushers, feeders, separators, sizers, dewatering, waste management, pretty much whatever you could think of. TerraSource is, again, one of those companies that I remember at last Ag 1, we talked with Kevin Hambris for one of our interviews. I believe that's who will be joining me for the upcoming episode. Don't quote me on that. But, a great company to work with. They're definitely on the forefront of what's going on in this industry. So very excited to talk with them, see what's going on within the company, see what kind of developments they're working on, and excited to see what we can expect from them at Ag 1 as well and beyond.
Yeah, and they're from St. Louis, so I know they're excited about the show being in their backyard. Yeah. Well, that's another episode down of Drilling Deeper, Jack. Thanks for joining us for episode 36, everybody, and you'll see us next time with Jack.
That's right. See ya.